This is Peter,
And this is Tom,
and you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcast.
now part of the Evergreen Podcast Network.
All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. Tommy, a nice short one for us today. What do we got?
But yeah, so we're going to be looking at pretty infamous and kidnapping that happened, definitely of the time. And I think that was the kidnapping of Frank Sinatra Jr. And there's a lot of podcasts just on this. There's supposed to be some movies coming out about it. I didn't really even know about it until I kind of just happened to find it. But there are podcasts that just focus just on this that are like hours long, that, a lot more detail. I mean, John Stamos actually does.
I saw that.
Is a narrator for some. There's going to be movies coming out about this. I think a Netflix movie they're working on. But it was a big deal when it happened, obviously, because you have to understand how
Big
much of a star Frank Sinatra was. And his son was only 19 when this happens. A lot of conspiracy theories that we'll talk about that kind of came from this. We can look at some of those conspiracy theories a little bit, which have been, I guess, disproven.
But I feel like there's some merit to them regardless. I think we should definitely mention them.
Well, definitely mention it. And it definitely makes it part of this story. Just call it, this kidnapping of Sinatra Jr. and why they did it, and the people, even the guy who did it has an interesting. One of the masterminds anyway is a very interesting story. I think one reason why they're making these movies about it now is it's a really interesting story, and it sounds like a movie. It's plot.
Yeah. I think when you and I got together and to talk about this, you're like, hey, why don't we do this? And I looked into it as well, and it's almost like, I wouldn't say it's a funny story. It's just so weird. It's like a weird, and you guys will see this. It's a weird kidnapping.
And the rationale behind it too. And
everything about it.
There's just so many weird things that happen. It's like, but it's true. That's the crazy thing too.
That's the crazy part. Yeah. The guy that actually came up with this, right? So he's still alive. Frank Sinatra Jr. passed away a few years ago, but the main guy is still alive. However, we'll get to that later, but he cannot really be recorded, right? Yeah.
Because of the son of Sam law, basically, which means a criminal cannot profit directly from any of their crimes.
Yep. So he can't really have like a documentary about it where he talks about what he did, how he did it. However, he has been interviewed numerous times, and we'll get into that a little bit as well today. So I think without further ado, let's get going. So Frank Sinatra Jr. Let's start with Frank Sinatra Jr. Right? Who is this guy?
He was born Francis Wayne Sinatra, so he's not technically a junior, because Frank Sinatra's middle name was Albert, but he was always known as Frank Jr. from a very young age. He was an American singer. He actually was a conductor for his father in the later years of his father's life, early 90s, songwriter. And he was known to be talented in his own right. He was born in Jersey City, New Jersey in 1944. Then he died in 2016, like you said before, at the age of 72. And he just wanted to be like his father. He wanted to be one of these. He wanted to be a famous singer. And he did get a certain level of
recognition and
fame. And they said he was actually talented. Quote, he said, is because of my last name, I have to work 3 times harder as other people who wanted to break into these business, stuff like that. And he even talks about he didn't really know his father that much growing up, but he always loved music and he wanted to be a pianist.
That was sad, right? They said Frank Sinatra Sr. was never home.
Well, yeah, because he was out performing or he was in a lot of movies and stuff like that. Even when this kidnapping happens, he's not even in the same state. He's out filming a movie, which we'll talk about with the Rat Pack. There's just a lot of stuff going on here, but he does, he did want his son, and they become much closer later on in life from what I saw.
Well, he takes care of him. That's kind of what I got out of it.
Takes care of his father later on in life, yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely interesting in the sense of like him saying like, well, I have to work harder because of my name. But I mean, let's not kid ourselves. That totally gave him a leg up, especially in the business of like, my dad's Frank Sinatra. So that's my name too. And I'm also going to sing, like, us people are going to give him a music.
Yeah, calling yourself Frank Sinatra Jr. is definitely going to... It's going to help. But you give him credit. He wanted to do something. I guess he didn't really even have to work. I mean, you're Frank Sinatra's son. You could do whatever you wanted.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the vibe you're getting here, too. We're like, as he's kidnapped, and we'll get to that in a second, you said he's still only a teenager, and this guy's already traveling around the country and about to go travel around the world, just singing. He's just got gigs. And he's kind of like, think of like a teen heartthrob almost, status, but it's not quite there yet. And that's what one of the conspiracy theories that later comes into play, that some people believe that this kidnapping was actually orchestrated by the Sinatra family to give him more media exposure. That was later debunked, but it still followed him for the rest of his life.
And we'll talk about it. In Sinatra himself, Frank Sinatra Sr. even says he's like, I don't need more fame to my name to do something like this. Like, there's just no reason for me to do that.
So let's get into Barry Keenan. The
Yeah,
interesting,
he's
colorful
the one that
character.
basically he's the mastermind behind all this, right? So Barry
Yep.
Keenan, he was a businessman. He was actually like pretty wealthy. At the age of 21, he actually was pretty successful. He was a member of the Los Angeles Stock Exchange, but he got in a car accident that just really messed him up. He
Yep.
became injured, so he got addicted to painkillers, and he came up with this kidnapping scheme. But he also, it's something that we will talk about now, and I guess we'll come back to later. He developed a type of condition, right, psychological
Hmm.
condition, but he basically heard voices,
Yep.
and that's what really led him to having this idea, because he believed that God okayed this plan. And if you dig a little bit deeper, he at first they wanted to kidnap Bob Hope. Did you see that?
Yeah, I
Bob
did see
Hope's
that.
son. They wanted to kidnap Bob Hope's son, but they just say no, we can't do that because that would be too un-American. And the reason they
Yeah.
picked Frank Sinatra Jr. is because they feel like Frank Sinatra did some bad things in his life, and
Yeah,
we'll
and he could
talk about
handle
it.
it. It's okay to
So,
make him
so
upset, right?
yeah, to make him upset. We're not going to hurt the kid. We have no plans on hurting him. We're just going to kidnap him, make him a little upset, right? And he also thought it was going to be okay because he had every intention, at least in his mind,
That's the crazy
that
part. Go for it.
that he was going to pay all the money back.
Yes, he was
Like
going to invest the money,
he was going to
right?
invest this money and then give it and then pay Sinatra back for it.
Yes, he was just
And that's
borrowing
what.
it by
Yeah, he was
stealing
just
his kid.
he was just borrowing it. He was just borrowing it. And that,
It's nuts.
and we'll talk about that when we get to the ransom, because that also makes why the ransom was what it was. So it was
Yep.
just weird. And he gets some of his friends to come along with this too. And these were high school friends. They were just like, hey buddy, let's go kidnap Frank Sinatra son.
And
You
some
know,
of the
like
friends actually, and they report some other people too, based on what I was reading. And other people are like, "Yeah, you're not actually going to do that," because Barry Keenan, as you mentioned, right? He was the youngest member of the LA Stock Exchange. This guy was super successful. By the time he was 21, 22, as you mentioned, Tom, he owned boats, he owned cars, he owned homes, like multiple, right? This guy was super wealthy. Think of like Wolf on Wall Street kind of thing. And then things crumble after this car accident, and he basically becomes addicted to painkillers, right?
he does this plot, right? He hatches this
Yep.
plot with his friend Joe Amsler and Johnny Irwin, and they're going to kidnap Sinatra. And they actually follow Sinatra for a while. It's not just like a spur of the moment type of thing. They're planning it out. They're trying to figure it out. They actually track him for a couple of weeks. He's only 23 at the time.
Keenan, yeah, Keenan's 23, and
Yeah,
Sinatra's 19. Yeah, they keep on following.
yeah.
They just can't pull the trigger.
Cities to cities. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
and obviously,
they want to find him a place when he's alone, and finally they decide to
yeah,
do it December 8th, 1963, just a few days after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And well, the reason we talk about it is because, again, they were kind of feeling, oh, that's one another reason why they pick him at the time is because, like, well, they knew that Sinatra was friends with JFK, which he
yep,
was, the father, so that he's going to be heartbroken because he lost JFK. Now we kidnap his son. He's definitely going to give us a ransom because he's going to want that back. So that was another reason why they decided to do it when they did. And at the time, Frank Sinatra Jr. is beginning his music career. He's performing at Harrah's Club Lounge in Lake Tahoe. It's between Nevada and California. And he was resting in between acts around 9 o'clock when he was in his dressing room with a friend of his when Keenan knocked on the door pretending to be a delivery package, like the delivery man delivering a package. And they just kind of bust in. They knock down Sinatra's friend, tie him up with medical tape. So it's not even duct tape, it's medical tape, which I don't know if you know what it's not the strongest tape in the world. There's ways to get out of it,
yeah,
right? And
yep,
then they blindfold Sinatra and they take him. They run out the side door into a waiting car with the friends on, and they drive off. And the singer gets out, like this friend gets out within a few minutes. He just kind
yep.
of frees himself and he's like, "Oh my god, what just happened?" And they go and call the police, and because it's Frank Sinatra's son, the FBI gets involved pretty much instantly.
Yep. Real quick, before we get into the Roblox aspect of it, this was such a detailed plan. These guys literally had like a 3-ring binder with
Of
exactly how
everything,
they
yeah,
were going to do this. And
yeah,
they were initially looking for money, like sponsors, like who could help us in front of some money to make this work. But as this guy frees himself and they call the police, news of this kind of gets out, and Frank Sinatra Sr. is basically within
yeah.
like minutes or half hour, he gets 2 important phone calls. One is from Bobby Kennedy, whose brother was literally just shot,
Just
right?
killed. Yeah,
And he's attorney general, and he's like, I can make this work for you. We could get your son back. But at the same time, he also gets a phone call from the mafia that are like, hey, Frankie, like senior, we could help you out too. Like we could get your son back.
yeah. We'll
And
get him
it's
back.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's really up
He,
to Frank Sinatra to be like, like which way do I
what am I
go?
going to do? Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's with the Rat Pack and they're filming a movie called Robin and the Seven Hoods. He's not even in the area, so he's doing that. He has a lot of friends. Let's just say Sinatra. He's
Yep.
got some friends in high places on both sides of the law,
Yep.
and everyone wants to help him because everyone wants to help old Blue Eyes, right? That's what Sinatra's name.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to help him out, so that right away they set up these roadblocks, like we said, and they actually stop Keenan,
Stop
which
the three guys. Yep.
they
Yep.
stop him and they just kind of talk their way out of it.
Well, they
They
took
did.
away out of it because they threatened Junior, right? Don't they tell Junior, like, listen, if we get
If you say
stopped,
anything,
we're
yeah,
just three friends. Just go with the story. We're three friends, and there'll be no shooting, and your friend's gonna be okay. Like they made it seem like the friend that was tied up, there was somebody else there that's gonna come and shoot him. But the third conspirator is not even with them yet. So far, it's just two
it's just the two
conspirators.
of them. Yeah,
Yeah, they
that
kidnap him,
happens.
they bring him, they get stopped, and Frank Sinatra Jr. is kind of afraid for his friend that was tied up. So he plays along with it, and they just get through this roadblock, and they keep on driving. By then, Frank Sinatra Sr. has agreed to work with the FBI to try to
To
get
pay
his son back.
the ransom. And just think about how different this was, because it's because they didn't know what Frank Sinatra Jr. looked like. Otherwise, they would know who it was. Like nowadays, they would just send a picture out looking for this person,
Yeah.
and you'd be able to get them. You'd probably get them right at that roadblock. But obviously, that didn't happen. So they get through, like you said, and that's when they recruit the
Third
third
guy.
guy. That's Joe Amsler, I believe.
No, no, that's the other one.
Oh,
That's
that's Johnny Irwin. That's Johnny
yep,
Irwin.
yep.
Johnny Irwin, and all he's basically going to be, he's going to be the one that's going to communicate with the Sinatra family.
How is he? Because everywhere I look, they're like John Irwin, Colts, Frank
Yeah, I
Sinatra
saw it too. Yeah,
Sr.
I don't know how he knew
Yeah,
Sinatra's phone
what?
number, but I
Like
guess
what?
maybe back then like those numbers were listed, and they call him. Like he just calls them, and the FBI is there. And like, all right, when they contact you, just agree to it. And the crazy thing is, it also shows how nuts Keenan was, or like how mentally disturbed he was. Sinatra comes right on TV right away and says, "I'm offering $1 million,
Which is
$2
like
million."
nine point something. It was
Yeah,
nine
yeah.
point something $1 million in today's money.
Right now for my kid's return. And then when they contact them, they say, "No, we don't want $1 million. We want $240,000."
Yeah, that's all we need.
Which is a lot of money. It's a
Yep.
lot of money back then. It's still a lot of money now. I'll take it. But yeah, he doesn't want $1 million because again, he says, "I'm just going to invest this and I'm going to give the money back." In his
Because he
mind,
is an
anyway.
investor. That's literally what the guy
Yeah,
does.
yeah. So
He's
he's
like
like,
a banker.
he's like, "This is all I need. You give me that, and I can make it into. I'll make that $9 million, no problem."
Crazy.
Sinatra gathers the money, he gives it to the FBI, and they actually to just take pictures of all of it. So they photograph all the serial numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then they drop it off their instructions, which is go to this like a gas station, right? And
It was,
they
but
drop.
this is what I don't get either because Keenan and Amsler, right, go and pick this up. How are they not like caught? How are there not police officers waiting at
That's
this
why
gas
they probably
station?
said, stay away and stuff like that. But it's a gas station. They had to pick it up between two buses, right?
Yep.
The money was going to be laid between two buses, December 11th, right?
Yep.
Of that year. Like you said before, I was thinking that too. Like, well, how come they don't have like people spying out somewhere and everything like that? So they actually had Frank Sinatra locked up for two days. They had him like basically. He said he had his blindfold on pretty much the whole time. So when Keenan and Amsler go to pick up the money, Irwin is still with Sinatra.
Irwin held on to Sinatra. They were
Yeah,
somewhere in
yeah.
Beverly Hills, and the other two guys basically did all the other.
Went to go get the money, and Irwin actually gets nervous. He's like, "Oh man, the FBI is on to me. They're definitely going to find me." He just lets Sinatra go. They say
Yep.
go. That's really interesting because when Sinatra goes, he's actually like left in the middle of nowhere, and he has to basically walk a couple miles. I
Yep.
believe he walks right up until a
Find
security guard.
some security guard. Yeah, like at a
Yeah,
random place.
a random place. And what happens? Did you see what happened with the security guard does? I mean, they know it's him, but they're worried about the publicity so much. A security
They
guard
put him in
put,
a
put
trunk.
him in the trunk of his car.
Yeah.
So you were just kidnapped. Don't
Yeah.
worry, you're safe now in the trunk of my car. And they
Yeah.
drive him to his mother's house, and that's where they get released here. But like Frank Sinatra talks to Junior said from that moment on, what is it? He always carried dimes in his
Oh, no, that was
pocket.
senior. That was senior.
Senior?
Yeah, that's what I thought that was so awesome because they said that they could only communicate. So they told Senior about as he was dropping off the money that we will only communicate via payphone. That was the kidnapper's demand.
Yeah.
And Senior basically was concerned because he never ever held any change in his
So
pocket. So he said from that point forward, like he always to this death, like literally they buried him with this in his pocket. He
buried
always
like
carried
50 cents worth of change or whatever it
yep,
was in his
yep,
pocket. So he could always make a phone call. Well,
at all
that's got to be
times.
traumatizing. Like your kid gets kidnapped and,
And you
because
don't
of
have
you.
change.
Yeah. Well, and they kidnap him because of you. You know what I mean? Because
Well, yeah.
they know you have money. Like it's not any other reason than that.
I guess we can't be famous, Tom. We can't be famous.
No, we don't have to worry about that. So
But this is interesting. Like, if anyone finds dimes, not that anyone's going to be looking and digging up Frank Sinatra Sr., but they buried him with the dimes from this point forward for the rest of his life. He always carried dimes so he can make a phone call. By the way,
yeah, well,
payphones, guys, for those of you that don't know,
yeah.
listening to us.
Do they even exist anymore? I don't really, you
No,
don't
I
really
don't
see
think
them.
so. I have not seen one in a very long time. What happens? How does this whole thing unravel? Because these guys get the money, which another thing, I don't know if you saw this, but out of the money that was eventually taken back from them, right? I thought it was interesting, was only $168,000 was recovered.
No one knows what happened to the rest of it. Yeah.
And we're talking days. Like, where did this money go?
It was, they caught him pretty quick.
Yeah, within days. All right, so how did they wind up catching him?
Ernest Club, he tells his brother, right?
Yep.
He confesses to his brother, oh, yeah, we're the one. And this is all over the news.
Yep.
This is like a huge story. It's all over the news. People are talking about it, but they're also really excited that Frank Sinatra Jr. is back. He's okay and everything like that. And his fame is obviously skyrocketing, I guess you can say it that way. A lot of people think, oh, are we going to catch these people? They go to New Orleans, and on the way they stopped in San Diego to visit his brother. And that's when Erland tells, his brother's like, hey, what have you been up to? He's like, well, you know what's going on in the news? That's me. So he and his brother's like, oh my God, my brother's this, con now, and quickly calls the authorities.
This gives me the vibes of like the Unabomber, like brother gives up brother kind of
thing. Well, they know, you committed a crime. It's probably safer that he gets turned in also this way than if there's like a shootout or something like that.
True.
You also know the mafia is probably out there looking for him too.
That is true because, Senior was a little
exactly
intense there.
So the FBI captured all three men later on that day, actually, and nearly all the ransom was recovered. And then in February of 1964 is when the trial started. And that's where all these conspiracy theories will pop out from.
Well, when you think of the trial itself, right away, there's three people, right? And two of them get life and one gets 75 years, but none of them serve more. Like Keenan serves 4.5 years. The other two guys serve 3.5 years. And they're all basically let go, even though they were supposed to spend their life in prison or at least 75 years. And the reason for it is because once this thing goes to trial, they realize fairly quickly that Keenan, who planned this whole thing, is literally like mentally unstable.
He's mentally insane. Yeah, and he was mentally unstable at the time of the crime, which then makes you unliable basically for the crime, especially in California law. He even says that in an interview that he said in 1998. He said that I was legally and mentally insane at the time of the kidnapping. We had no criminal malice, didn't fit the profile of normal criminals, right? Didn't profit from it, so that was it. They were like, oh, he actually winds up becoming a pretty successful businessman.
He becomes millionaire. He becomes after all this a huge millionaire. He's worth, by 1983, Keenan, right? So he gets out of prison in 1968, and then he goes right into real estate and becomes this huge real estate developer. And by 1983, his net worth was estimated at $17 million in 1983. It's surreal. And this is a guy that just masterminded this whole kidnapping, should have been in prison for the rest of his life. And like, imagine being Frank Sinatra Jr. though, and this guy just got out and is worth $17 million.
Yeah, and he was getting mad because then in 1999, Keenan and the other two men were offered a deal by Columbia Pictures, $1.5 million in exchange for, again, talking about it. And then Frank Sinatra Jr. files a lawsuit to block the deal. He's like they can't do this, and California law does forbid felons from profiting from their stories of their crimes, so they weren't allowed to do it. Keenan argued in his late 50s, he was in his 50s at the time, that it violated his First Amendment rights, that he should be allowed to speak about it. And it was a huge, long legal battle that eventually the court sided with Frank Sinatra Jr. and he won the case, saying, the law holds up. You cannot profit from your crime. He still talked about it. He wrote a book about it called This American Life in 2003. Showtime made a movie about it called Stealing Sinatra. He's still alive today. He's 81 years old. He's almost like glorified now, which that's what kind of interested me about this story. Like you planned a kidnapping, you kidnapped probably one of the most famous people in the world at the time. Even today, everyone knows who Frank Sinatra is. You may not know that he had a son named Frank Sinatra Jr. You may not know about this kidnapping, but you know who Frank Sinatra is. That song and that singer and the songs he wrote, I Fly Me to the Moon, New York, New York. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of other ones that people are going to get mad at. But like he was famous. He was it. Right at the time, his son gets kidnapped, and this guy's masterminded, and now he's getting all these movie deals. He's out of jail.
This is what kind of gets me about Frank Sinatra, and this is the craziness about these kidnappers. Frank Sinatra's connections, I want to go back to the mob, are legit. Like these kidnappers are lucky
for where he grew up, for where he was definitely, he knew people. Put it that way.
Oh, yeah. So the FBI actually tracked Sinatra for over 40 years. They had literally a file of thousands of pages about his movements, the people that he dealt with, his friendships. These files were actually made public. You could see them. They were made public in 1998 after Sinatra's death. And they basically, they read like the movie Casino. It's kind of nuts.
He just knows everybody, yeah.
Through the files, there's a lot of interesting things. One thing I find interesting, doesn't really pertain here, but he paid a doctor $40,000 to declare him medically unfit for World War II service because they said he had a punctured eardrum, so then he couldn't go. But once you start actually looking at it, he not only introduced JFK to some mafia people, he got the mob involved in a plot to assassinate Fidel Castro. So he was almost like a go-between the mob and the federal government. Like
Government,
this
yeah,
guy's connections were,
because he was so famous.
yeah, pretty intense. So these kidnappers are more than lucky that they ever lived to really tell the tale, and they're
Yeah,
still alive
and
today.
that they were able to talk about as much as they were, because it could
Crazy.
have been easily taken out by one of Sinatra's friends.
Did you see this thing that after FBI got involved in tracking his son, apparently the FBI knew a little too much about what was going on with the kidnapping before Frank Sinatra Sr. actually shared it with them. So they said that this was, like I read it at it was a History Channel thing, that Sinatra from this point forward of the kidnapping knew that the government was actually tracking his activities. In 79 and 1980, Frank Sinatra Sr. himself requests and receives his FBI file through the Freedom of Information Act. He's like, I want to know what you have about me. Like, release my files. And they do release most of the files to him. And he got caught on because of this kidnapping scheme. He's like, how come the FBI already knows so much about my son being kidnapped? Like, if I didn't tell them everything, clearly they're listening and paying attention to what's happening in my life and in, my phone calls, so on and so forth. Interesting stuff. Frank Sinatra was definitely an interesting character, to say the least. Junior never
Well, he was like famous, I guess
ish.
ish, and he in, I guess, that world, like he did have a lot of songs that actually did very well. He's probably got introduced a lot to the later generation. He appeared in several episodes of Family
Family
Guy.
Guy. I saw that.
In
Yeah.
Family Guy, he was as a singer, like he voiced himself. He played himself. He did a lot of that. He made plenty of money doing his own things. He was very good at like the Vegas, the Strip, and he was in some movies as well. Appeared in The Sopranos as himself. He had a successful career. Like a lot of people would take it. It wasn't what his father's was, but it's going to be hard to like be in that shadow, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the way he's finished his career. After Senior died, he started singing again, and the show he started singing was literally known Sinatra Sings Sinatra.
Yeah, he
Like,
just did
I
his
just kind
father's
of feel
act. Yeah.
like, that's got to
Well, I
stop.
mean, I don't know. I mean, you're honoring your father. I'm sure that's something that was
Well, yeah, but I mean,
well liked.
especially, I guess if you're in that shadow. I guess I do think that his claim to fame is being kidnapped, which is why some people believe, as I mentioned before, what if like his career just wasn't taken off the way he wanted to, and the Sinatras organized this to give credibility to his name, to give him some,
Well,
media
you
exposure.
do hear stories about that, about like some people, like rappers who like want to get shot. I just like, not like, I guess, famous ones now, but ones that they think that's got them getting famous. Wasn't there that one actor that like said he got like attacked? I forgot the name. And he still argued that it was really attacked, but the people that attacked him said, no, they paid us to attack him so he could get on TV and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
especially I mean, this is way before reality TV, but people will do anything to try to get famous. But again, I said Sinatra argued that, and then they actually, I forgot to mention before, they did find a confession letter that Keenan wrote in a safety deposit box, and Keenan
Oh, I didn't
admits
see
to it
that.
too. So Keenan does admit to it. He's like, "No, we planned this. Like, we this was not like a publicity stunt at all." And obviously, why would he try to sue him and stuff? So there's, obviously, it was proven. The FBI didn't think that it was any merit to that, and it was been proven since then that that was not the case. But at the time, there was a lot of talk about it. I'm sure there's people that still kind of believe it was a publicity stunt. But if you want to say it was, I guess it didn't really work. I mean, he got some podcasts talking about it, a couple of movies talking about it, but at the time, it didn't really change his career that much.
I think that pretty much concludes our podcast on the Sinatra Jr. kidnapping. I mean, I didn't know about this really until you mentioned it. So maybe we did surprise some of you guys with this choice. But thank you so much, as always, for listening. And if you need to find us, you can find us at www.historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. We're always there. If you guys have any questions, comments, shoot us an email. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are also there as well. So I guess until next time, guys, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week.
Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.